This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one website building platform designed to help you succeed selling your artwork, making a portfolio, building your business, and more. Joann Fabric stores has gone bankrupt for a second time in a year, and as a result is now closing over 800 stores across the United States. And this is a severe loss to the crafting and especially sewing, crocheting, knitting, fabric community. Joann's, if you don't live in the USA, is a huge chain store that has always been known to be the best place to go for fabrics of all kinds. It's kind of a hybrid arts and crafts store as well as a fabric store because they kind of sell a bit of everything related to being a hobbyist. As I currently film this video, it's only been a few days since Joann's has announced liquidation and the closure of all of their stores. Currently, they are $615 million in debt, which is mind-blowing to me how that can even happen, but we're gonna cover all of this later on in the video. For like an arts, crafts, fabric store, how does this even happen? Is this a sign that art is dying? Is it a sign of things to come for future art stores? Are hobbies just dead now? Are people no longer able to afford their hobbies or have time for their hobbies? Or is it just a sign of the times that one day there won't be any art stores to go to at all? This is such a huge loss, especially to those who sew, knit, crochet, people that just love to do stuff with fabric. I think this in particular is such a huge blow. If you don't have a local fabric or yarn store, Joann's is pretty much the only place to go. The only other option is Hobby Lobby, which that needs a video in itself. Now, if you live in the USA, tell me if you remember a shop called AC Moore. It had very Michaels vibes, and I remember the one local to me at the time closed probably a good decade, if not longer ago.
There's no place like AC Moore.
Let's make something.
Miles of yarn, aisles of jewelry, paints in all colors, frames in all sizes,
Everything you need is here.
and so much more. Create more, share more, save more. AC Moore.
It was a fantastic shop. It was pretty reasonably priced compared to other shops. And I remember thinking at the time how sad it was that the shop was closing down. They had 145 stores and all of them closed by 2020. And to my knowledge, this was the first real huge hit to the arts and crafts community of a big chain arts and crafts retailer shutting. A lot of the reason they closed was because of intense competition, so the likes of Michaels, Joann's, Hobby Lobby, as well as competitive prices with online retailers. And obviously it is the way of the world that a lot of online shopping has caused the closure of so many shops. But why Joann's in particular? While you can buy fabric online, you can buy yarn online, you can't feel it. And that's something that you can't get unless you go to a shop. If you buy yarn online, you don't know if it feels soft or if it feels like your great aunt Tessie's cardigan and is itchy and is gonna cause you a rash. Jokes aside, this is an incredibly sad situation, and to me, yes, they were very expensive. There's not a lot of fabric, knitting, crocheting, yarn shops out there anymore. You might find boutique ones or small businesses, but Joann's was really the place to go. Joann's also has for years had a huge issue with their customer service, with their supply, the state of their stores, and I will be sharing my personal opinions on Joann's in this video, yes. However, do remember to take that with like a grain of salt a little bit, because my experience is obviously not going to be everyone's experience. Like this doesn't just happen in a couple of weeks, you know, that's years of whatever the hell that is. I did go ahead and also ask on my Instagram people to share their experiences personally with Joann's, so I'll be sharing those opinions as well. I have never had a good shopping experience in Joann's, and I always thought it was just me. Maybe it was my local Joann's, but I've lived in 4 states here in the USA for the last 20 years. Every single Joann's that I have been to has been a relatively similar experience for me. Generally speaking, and again, this is general, please take this with a grain of salt because my experience will not be your experience necessarily. I personally have found customer service to be quite rude at times or unhelpful. Staff is lacking, most likely due to, you know, the head corporation not funding enough people to be working there. I had a really bad experience once at Joann's when I was doing a pickup. Someone was incredibly rude to me on the phone. The stores always seem like they're lacking in stock. And again, these are just the stores that I've been to in Joann's. Again, they have 800 locations. They're not all going to be this way, but that For me personally and mentally, when I heard they were going bankrupt, I was like, based on my experience, I wasn't surprised. But I wanted to get some people's opinions as well on their personal experience with Joann, so I did ask on my Instagram, and these were some of the responses that I received. I basically said, I'm curious for research purposes, what is your personal experience with Joann? The products / lack thereof, thank you. I don't have the best experience because I can't ever find what I'm looking for. I like Joann's, never had a bad experience with them. I've always had an excellent experience with Joann's in every way. Lately, the last 2 years, it seems they don't have the staff hours available to properly stock items. Their prices are twice what Michael's is for me, and their stores are older / falling apart. Our local Joann's is pretty sad, very dark, some empty shelves, only a few staff. My friends tell me it always smells of poo. I mean, they're kind of dirty at times, but I don't know if you can go that far. I also had some longer responses. I was a manager at 3 different stores, and it really depends on the store manager, and most of the time they're not great. The corporate offices are a mess. My first store manager was great. The people genuinely loved working there, were super knowledgeable. The people that work the fabric are normally there the longest and the nicest. Then I moved across the country and worked at 2 different stores in LA. The first was absolutely disgusting and unorganized, and because I complained and tried to change things, the store manager requested I be transferred elsewhere. Then I moved to a different store, which was a lot more organised, but it was a main store in LA, and corporate was very involved, and it became clear to me they were a mess. We found out the male manager made more than all of the women despite having been recently hired. Yet when we were hired, we were told there was no way of making more. I mean, that's disgusting. So very mixed bag of experiences. I actually decided to go check out the state of Joann's now, as they prepare to close one of my local stores.
Today is February 24th. So 3 days ago, Joann's actually announced that they're going to be closing all 800 stores. And it's kind of sad because I've never seen it this busy before. They don't even have any signs on the outside of the building to say like shutting down or anything. So people are obviously coming here hoping for like a good sale, but most things are just like 20 to 30% off, which you could get a better deal just normally anyway with a coupon. I think though the problem with Joann's is there's just too much of a mixture of everything now. Obviously at this point they're not going to be worrying too much about how Joann's is looking. They're not going to care about how neat the shelves are or how clean the floors are. Joann's has always been the kind of slightly messier store from my experience. They only announced a few days ago this specific store was shutting anyway. I'm not sure if coupons still work or can stack on top of this, but obviously they are trying to get rid of everything, so literally everything's on sale.
Now in my eyes, I've always seen Michael's as the art store and Joann's is more like the fabric hybrid store.
So many toys. They have like rows and rows and rows of toys. So here's the yarn section, and again I have seen these on a higher sale than they are currently now, so it's not really worth it at the moment. This half of the store is mostly taken up by home decor now, and a lot of people said they think this is why Joann suffered like they did, because there was too much option for home decor. Then you make your way up this way, you have some paper crafts here. Actually more aisles for paper crafts than there are like actual art supplies I found. Still paper crafts. Oh, there's some photo albums, more paper crafts, vinyl, my husband. And that tiny little section for art supplies back there, which I feel like should have been expanded.
Hobby Lobby is just kind of a mixture between the two, and I'm not a fan of the owners of Hobby Lobby, so I just refuse to support them.
Okay, so I'm in the art section right now. I'm gonna see if there's anything that's on a really good deal that might be worth coming in for. These things are actually locked away. Nothing like stands out too much just yet. However, then you look here, and this is where the Copics were apparently, and $2.97. I'm so mad I missed this. Nothing on the Poscas yet though. I'm guessing they just don't want to sell that off until last minute. If you like Gamblin oil paint, these are $2.97. Paint and the finishes are only 10% off. I'm also slightly gutted because my favorite paints, there's not really anything great on these right now. Even though Liquitex Basics aren't on clearance yet, except this one random color. I feel like anything that had a clearance sticker on it is just like out of stock. Doesn't matter what it is, people have just been like, clearance, let's grab that. It doesn't matter what it is that had a red tag, everything has been taken. One of the things that I saw most people complaining about with Joann's was that a lot of their Joann's would carry mostly fleece, which isn't ideal, especially in the summertime, and a lot of people are like, I don't want fleece. I think there's a lot to be said for the fact that people don't necessarily sew as much as they would a few decades ago. I think crochet specifically and knitting has become really popular with my generation. Joann's are quite expensive anyway, and I think especially for my generation who are saving for a house, saving for a family. They don't have the money to spend in Joann's when they could just get it a lot cheaper online.
They did have some sales going on, nothing too extravagant yet. It was only like 20% off.
So while we're on the topic of hobbies, crafting, art, I want to talk a little bit more about our sponsor today, Squarespace. So I have used Squarespace for years myself, for portfolios of my artwork, to newsletters for customers, to most recently selling prints of my artwork. The online stores feature is one of my favorites of Squarespace because you can sell products, services, or both. You can provide classes, tutorials, and have members-only areas for your website and make it beautifully designed to showcase your brand. Or if you want to sell your crochet, knitting, or art projects that you've done, you can do that too. Online payments with Squarespace are easy, and built-in tools give you the inventory, shipping, and fulfillment options that you need. Over the years, I've used several platforms for online sales just for a multitude of reasons, sometimes at the same time, sometimes I'll choose one over the other. I love Squarespace for certain product drops, for a nice, clean, easy for customers to use platform. Another great feature is their SEO tools. So if you choose to start your own website, SEO tools on Squarespace help your website to get discovered fast. All websites are optimized with meta descriptions, so your website has a better chance of showing in search engines for your customers. So if you want to try Squarespace for yourself, go to squarespace.com/CHLOEROSEART for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use offer code CHLOEROSEART. And thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video.
But like a lot of companies, Joann's had a bit of a rocky start. Joann Fabrics was actually founded as the Cleveland fabric shop in 1943 by a group of German immigrants, and after further expansion was just changed to Joann Fabrics, which was named after the founder's daughters. In 1994, Joann's then acquired a shop called Clothworld. Clothworld was essentially a chain store throughout the United States that had 342 stores, and at the time Joann's themselves already had about 655 stores running alone, and as of 2025 they have 850 stores across 49 states. And in 2019, Joann's lost $547 million. Then in 2020, with everyone taking fabric to make masks and people wanting to get into crafts and sewing to keep themselves amused during a very difficult time, they actually made back $213 million. Now, there are a lot of issues that go into running a business. Joann's clearly had their fair share of financial and business mistakes. I'm going to link a video in the description that actually goes over this in far more depth than I will be able to. Very, very interesting watch, so make sure you check it out down below. But from an obvious standpoint alone, fabrics have always been a bit iffy, and because so much of Joann's store was taken up by fabrics.
So yeah, obviously this whole section is fabric. Again, so many people buying fabrics and things like that.
I think a lot of their downfall was down to the fact that people just weren't using them like they did when they first opened. Stereotypical housewives, they used to make clothes for themselves, for their families, for their children. Sewing and making clothes was such a huge thing. And then of course you have things like knitting. My great grandma was born in 1917 and she was incredible at knitting. She would donate blankets, she would donate clothes and these little overalls that she would make. But unfortunately, it was kind of a dying thing, at least in my family. My grandma never learned how to knit herself. My mum tried to learn how to knit. She asked my great-grandma once, can you teach me how to knit? And because my great-grandma was right-handed and my mum was left-handed, my great-grandma was like, I don't know what to do with you, I'm sorry, I don't know how to help. So my mum never learned either. So, you know, I clearly don't know how to knit. Crochet is something that I feel that my generation have really gotten into again, something that thanks to platforms like YouTube or Skillshare, people are actually able to learn how to do these things. At one point, you'd have to just pick up a book and look at pictures and be like, this is how you do it. And I mean, pictures are great and all, but they're confusing. And of course, generally speaking, a lot of people don't have the time to make their own clothes now because obviously more people now go out to work or they work 24/7 looking after the children at home. Obviously not generalizing here with gender roles or anything, but we're talking about the past where, you know, those sort of gender roles were very heavy. People are working 9-to-5 jobs now, you know, raising the kids, making food, going to the gym, trying to have a wholesome lifestyle. And of course, then comes along fast fashion where it's actually cheaper to buy cheap clothes than it is to buy the fabric and spend a ton of time making the clothes in the first place. Now, during 2020, they faced a lot of criticism because they really heavily tried to stay open despite orders telling them that they needed to shut for public safety, for the health of their employees. And they just didn't want to do that. And I can understand it. They're a business, they need to make money, but the way they went about it was not the right way to do it. They claimed their store was essential because their free mask kits were helping hospitals. During this time, a lot of Joann's employees were actually telling people that the free mask kits that they were offering to people were actually just pieces of fabric from the clearance bins. Things got even worse for Joann's when the governor of Michigan actually ordered a stay-at-home order. And because of this, their locations were forced to close. They did try to go against this, and the Attorney General turned down their request to stay open. And this is because they deemed them not critical infrastructure, which was a part of the entire stay-at-home order in the first place. Like, the only places that could stay open had to be critical infrastructure. Another Seattle-based manager said, the staff attempted to comply with company orders by supplying the mask kits with high thread count 100% cotton fabrics, but it had gotten to the point where they were just grabbing random bolts of fabric off the shelves as they burned through all of their clearance fabrics. And then in a town called McHenry, Illinois, the city told major retailers they need to shut down, like we need to close all of the non-essentials. They were even served cease and desist letters by the police department. And this is because they failed compliance checks done by the police department in the first place. I think another issue that Joann's faces is the fact that people don't have the money available to them right now. For a store that was already failing, to go bankrupt a second time in the span of a year truly shows that people are just not spending the money in the shop. They just can't keep up with retailers like Michael's or Hobby Lobby. I've probably been to at least 15 Michael's stores in my life, and of course I've seen a couple that were not run as well. But I think on the whole, from what I've seen from people and what I've seen myself, Michael's and Hobby Lobby are generally run overall a little better than Joann's is. Prices also seem higher than their counterparts like Michael's and Hobby Lobby. People are having poorer shipping experience, especially now people can barely afford their own food shopping in a week. If they want to keep up with their hobbies and they have limited money, they're not going to choose to go to Joann's if they have the option to get it cheaper somewhere else. Even big Walmarts sell fabric for significantly less than somewhere like Joann's does. But of course, like anything, online shopping is detrimental to a lot of brick and mortar stores, because brick and mortar stores can't keep up with the costs of running their shops whilst trying to keep prices low like they can on the internet. Another shop called Hancock Fabrics used to sell very similar products to Joann's as well, and they closed all of their shops by 2016 as well. Another big issue with Joann's is the fact that, like Etsy, they went public. So in 2021, Joann's went public on the NASDAQ, the stock market, after raising nearly $131 million in IPO, which is initial public offering. However, in the fall of 2023, they announced the layoff of workers at the corporate headquarters in Hudson, Ohio. Then around a month later, NASDAQ actually handed Joann's a delisting notice. Joann's stocks actually fell below $1, which is a really bad sign. Then on March 18th, 2024, Joann's actually filed for bankruptcy for the first time. With this bankruptcy, they attempted to reorganize, restructure so they could come back, get some of their debt written off. They planned to cut over $500 million in debt, which would help them out significantly. And they also hoped to restructure themselves back into a private company. And now in January of 2025, less than a year later, they filed for bankruptcy once more, because this time their debt has now risen to over $615 million, and it's a hole they just couldn't get out of. Despite getting rid of $505 million the year before, they're now $615 million in debt. Joann said that their reason for filing for bankruptcy a second time was just down to the fact they had declining sales and inventory shortages. So that's kind of the financial side of things. Obviously, again, I will link a video that really goes into all of that sort of aspect better than I ever will. I've really gained more of a fondness for Joann's in the last year or two. I actually bought my first Woobles kit from Joann's, and it's really a knock-on effect too, because the Woobles kits first went to Joann's as a shop, and now the Woobles are going to be having their products taken out of the store. So it really has a negative domino effect on so many people. They stated that inflation, inventory shortages, competition, and disruption in supply chain had all gone into the reason why they had to file bankruptcy a second time. It ended up getting sent to auction to see, what can we do? There's an auction, and the auction basically just went to the fact that all stores are now going to be liquidated and closed. Even retail experts say that Joann shoppers have switched to Michael's and Hobby Lobby instead. And I know so many people that need fabric hate going to Hobby Lobby for it, but at this point it's literally their only option. The sad thing is the people that suffer here are the employees and the people that shop there. I think it really shows a sign of the times, and I think it then raises the concern, is this going to happen to other art stores too? Yes, you have the smaller dedicated art stores like Jerry's Artarama and Blick, but they're not huge arts and crafts stores, kind of like Michael's and Hobby Lobby are. We lost AC Moore, we lost Joann's. What's going to happen now? Me personally, I'm not overly affected by the closure of Joann's because I didn't really go there a whole lot anyway. Their arts and crafts section is so tiny for me personally that it wasn't really worth going there unless I wanted yarn for my crochet projects. If Michael's was to announce a closure, I would be absolutely devastated, but Michael's is a private company. They seem to be doing very, very well. They're making good profits, so I don't think stores like Michael's will be going anywhere anytime soon. I think it's a bigger chain than Joann's. I think that they're going to benefit greatly from the fact that Joann's is closing. They'd probably be smart as well to add fabric to their stores somewhere now that people are so much more limited, because I think that they have a real niche now they can tap into. This is why I think personally, if you can purchase from a store instead of online, it's very important too. For a lot of people, this isn't an option. Again, people are going to buy what they can afford at the end of the day, but if you are able to, I love to read. My husband and I will go to Books A Million, for example, or Barnes & Noble, and we'll go and buy a book at the shop, even if it's a couple dollars more than it is on Amazon. We'll deliberately buy the book at the bookstore because I would be so devastated if bookstores went away. But I think overall, this just shows a sign of the times. And I think, you know, any business that doesn't handle financials very well, this is always going to be a risk. But people are always going to make art. People are always going to need a place to go to buy art supplies and to buy products, to buy canvases. And even though the likes of Michael's are pricier than you can get online, I think for the convenience and how many stores they actually have, fingers crossed, they will be okay. Well, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this was insightful or it can help build a discussion in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on this entire situation, how you feel about it. It's totally okay to feel very upset by this. I mean, it's a huge part of history. For now, once again, thank you so much for watching this video. Take care of yourselves and I will see you in the next video.